So Alex, well, you've retired, but you're still a very busy man. There's another book out. How was it to write?
Yeah, it was a challenge, of course. It's a different type of book, of course, in leadership. But through a mutual friend of Mike Moritz and myself, we decided to do it about 8 years ago, and they met me in London the night before we played Arsenal, actually, and put this idea to us about doing this book on leadership and correlating his own business and the football side of it. But I wasn't ready for that because I'm still absorbed in my job at United. But after I retired, we met up in New York, and thought that it was a better idea for me then, obviously because I haven't retired for a few months at a time. And in fairness to Mike, he did a fantastic job because he kept flying across from San Francisco to Winslow, doing all these interviews, and he's done a fantastic job. He's a very successful man, and I think dealing with somebody who's successful, he understands the dynamics of my job, so that it was quite a good partnership.
So this book is all about leadership, and do you think that leaders are born a certain way to lead people, or are these qualities that you sort of pick up as you go along in life?
Well, I think things that you can pick up, I don't doubt that, in terms of education and organisational ability, or joining a big company where you develop right through it. You've read about some people who start stacking shelves and end up the CEO of a company. I've read about several people like that. But I think real leadership, I think most people are born with something, and I think that instinct they have, or the personality they have, or the inspirational qualities they have, come really to the front, really.
And presumably charisma is essential in this kind of situation when you're trying to lead groups in whatever field it is.
Yeah, charisma is maybe applies itself a little bit, but I think it's the personality of the person, really, that is really important. Personality can deal with all aspects of human beings, that, for instance, to have to deal with successful people, I think you have to have a strong personality to do that. For instance, at United, we had a lot of big players. It never derailed me, ever, because I felt that the personality to deal with it,
And do you have to have empathy then for the group that you're leading as well in that kind of situation?
Well, absolutely. I think that you build up a trust with them also, and you if you give them the responsibility, they then understand how you deal with the dynamics of your job, and they're looking for that consistency of who you are. I think that was really important. So I could understand the people who worked with me because most of them were there with me a long time, so I understood their character, understand their qualities, what they brought to the table, and their work ethic. So these are all important aspects of the job I always look for.
We know Sir Alex Ferguson is a leader, but what was a young Alex Ferguson like? Were you a leader as a boy?
Well, my dad thought I was. My dad used to take me off a bit. I had too much to say, and I think a school teacher used to have a few words with him about my impact in the team a bit, But I felt even when I was a young player, I always remember with a team talk with the manager, and I says, I don't think we should do that, And he said, well, you come up and see how good you are. So I went up to the tactics board and started doing it, and the players would give me stick. They absolutely battered me after it, But I think that, I suppose there was something in it. Maybe my trade union background gave me the ability to make decisions, and being able to present myself, And also, I think the most important thing is I was a winner. I couldn't handle defeat at all when I was young. It's only later years that you learn how to handle defeat. Don't enjoy it, but you learn how to handle it. It's really important. Discipline was drummed into me from an early age. On school days, my dad would always shake my leg promptly at 6 a.m. Maybe that's why, a couple of decades later as a manager, I got into the habit of appearing for work before the milkman had arrived. People will give a manager plenty of opportunities to crack the whip, so it's best to pick and choose your moments. You don't have to dish out a punishment very often before everyone gets the message. I place discipline above all else, and it might have cost us several titles. If I had to repeat things, I'd do precisely the same, because discipline has to come before anything else.
And your mother and father worked in factories and shipyards. They were very disciplined. They were always punctual. Things like that. That seems to have been ingrained in you from a young child.
Absolutely. No, that was real important. And my mother used to say, don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie. You know, that was drummed into. My grandmother too was exactly the same. So there's a foundation that your parents gave you, and it never leaves you. It never leaves you, because that's what you take that through your life. And I think maybe when you get older, of course, your personality may differ in terms of who you are and what your parents were, but that foundation is still there. For instance, I was probably too like my dad, and we used to argue a lot, and but that is probably due to your growing up and try to find yourself, and I think that was, but that foundation was always there. Listening provides an understanding of who people really are, what makes them tick. After a game against Leeds United in 1992, I was in the bath with the players, which was highly unusual for me. Listening to their analysis of the match, Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister were raving about Eric Cantona, the French striker Leeds had signed from Reims. Steve Bruce was particularly complimentary about Cantona's abilities. Somehow, those comments planted a seed, which soon afterwards led us to signing Eric, and we all know how that turned out. Listening, even just for a few moments, led to a decision that changed the landscape for Manchester United.
You've had a terrific career, but I guess a lot of people have helped you along the way. You've taken guidance from people, and the great Jock Stein, I suppose, is an example of that. But you only take on advice from people if you're willing to listen to them, I suppose. Absolutely, listening is really important, and I think that I was always quite a good listener. People like Jock Stein, of course, but even if you go back to your teachers and things like that, and my boys' club leaders and my boys' brigade officers, I listened to these people because you knew they were wanting to do their best for you. That was their responsibility. So later in life, I think that maybe in staff meetings, you would be listening to them, and sometimes they'd be away in another world, thinking about the game. And when the staff would say something pertinent, I go, taking it in, that. So that was really important. And with Jock Stein, that was a gift to get that opportunity to work with him. Because the things that I probably didn't understand at that time, his networking was fantastic. He knew everything that was happening in the game. He knew the weaknesses of everyone. I remember he said to me one day, he says, "Come on to the press conference with me." And I says, "I'm going to get into the gym with Richard Goff if he wants to do some." He says, "Get him after. Come on with me." So that slow draw, and we go along, we're sitting outside the press room. And we went there before the press come, you see. So he's sitting there like that. The press will come along the big long corridor, and he's whispering to me. He says, and he knew he was talking about them. He says, "That one drinks in Smith's pub, that one there's going. He's never at the bookies." And then, "Oh, Joe, hello Jim, how you doing?" Oh, he was brilliant. "Do you think we're going to ask him a bad question?" Absolutely no chance. He was fantastic, but a very intelligent man.
And it was a pleasure to work with him. You know, he didn't sleep a lot, you know. He never drank. And so we used to be in the hotel, maybe in Glasgow before because used to be up on the Saturday night before the Wednesday game, so you had 4 days to prepare. I'd be there at 4 in the morning, you know, and just talking football all the time. And I used to try and plug him about how they won the European Cup, beating Inter Milan, and he would always shelve the question in terms of himself, and would talk about how good Johnson was, and Bobby Murdoch and Bertie Hall. These were great players, and he was fantastic at not taking the sort of a glory out of it. But it was a great experience for me to learn from that man, you know, because he offered a lot, you know.
Tell us about the moments when your leadership skills were perhaps tested the most.
It's always after a defeat. I mean, but we had some defeats, you know. I mean, you have to. We're never infallible, you know. We're human beings. But at Manchester United, you can't afford many defeats, you know, in terms of if you want to win something. But the challenges were always after heavy defeats. You know, you think with some heavy. That early one when we got against City, it was 5-1. I was just at the club no long. That was a big challenge to go over that kind of defeat. You remember we lost 5-0 to Newcastle up at Newcastle, and then it was the next Saturday to Southampton 6-3. You know, there was a period, and the critics were writing us off. It's the demise of Manchester United. We won the league by 8 points. You know, so that's a challenge. If you think the number of times we were second 5 times in the Premier League, right? Won the league next year. That's a challenge. So to go over a defeat of losing the league, that's the big challenge. And that's where your leadership skills come into it, your experience comes into it, and the most important thing, determination not to let that happen again. And that was paramount in terms of how we behaved at United. Some people can make decisions, others can't. Usually you make a decision either too early or too late. I prefer to make them early. It doesn't work if you're hesitant by nature and allow things to linger. Others are in a perpetual quest for the last possible morsel of information, using that as an excuse not to make a decision. When you're in the football world, and I suspect in almost every other setting, you have to make decisions with the information at your disposal, rather than what you wish you might have. I never had a problem reaching a decision based on imperfect information. That's just the way the world works.
You once said to me, when you make a decision, you have to stick to it. But did you ever have doubts when you made a big call? I think we all make mistakes. But I always thought that if I was pondering something or thinking about something that was really important, I never went to my bed worrying about it. I'd make my mind up about it. So what did you learn about yourself during your tenure at United?
Well, I think that what I learned at United, I developed, although my career at Aberdeen gave me all the confidence that I could be successful, and I had to accept that challenge of coming to England to prove to myself. And the best club to go to was Manchester United, without question. Because the summer before I came to United, I said to the chairman at Aberdeen, Dick Dolan, a wonderful man, I said that I was wanting to leave, that I felt that I needed a new challenge. I felt that I'd done all I could at Aberdeen. And he says, well, have you got a club? And I said, no, I don't have a club, but I think I'll get a club. He says, I'm sure you will. He said, my advice is don't go to anyone unless it's Manchester United. Now at that point, believe me, we knew nothing about Manchester United. But he had this thing, his son had played for Manchester United, you see, Ian Donald, as a young boy. So his opinion was, I needed that kind of challenge. And so therefore, I took that challenge. So what I actually learned about going to United was that I had to be consistent. I was going to be consistent. I was not going to change my conviction about developing the football club. That was important to me. And that gave me that sort of a perseverance right through my career at United, that I was going to persevere for where we were going all the time. And I didn't change. I wouldn't change. And I think that the consistency eradicates confusion in the camp, you know. Your staff then know who you are, that you're not changing, you are what you are, and they have the confidence saying that I'm okay because the gaffer's here, the manager's here. So you can create quite a strong bond. For instance, the number of people that stayed with me for the almost the duration of my time there, with Dave Bushell, Wes Kershaw, Jimmy Ryan, Tony Whelan, Paul McGinn, they've been there almost the time I arrived there, simply because the continuity of staff is just as important as the manager's continuity. So I think that perseverance in my job is really important.
Being successful at the club for so long means that you built a lot of different teams along the way. So did you have to change your style at all, according to the characters in the team?
Well, we always tried to get wide players. That was the one thing we always tried to get. I learned in my last year as a player, my last couple of years as a player, I was a centre forward. But then when I started to go with my pace a little, that I used to drop in the middle of the pitch. And I realised then, players who can drop in that hole can be a problem for the opponents. And I learned that playing two strikers up the pitch doesn't necessarily always be the right thing. Because if you withdraw one, you have 2 points of attack, whereas you have two up the pitch, you only 1 point of attack. So all my teams had always a player who could drop in a little bit, and we always had players wide. Aberdeen, United. So that, my style never changed that way. Sometimes you may not have the kind of wide players or the kind of strikers that you prefer, so we're always looking for it. What's it? Bringing Teddy Sheringham, Dwight York, Eric Cantona, were players of that ilk. And wide players like Kanchelskis, Sharp, Giggs, Valencia, you know. We always look for players who could play wide, Nani, you know. And I think that's part of what you are, you know, what I believe in.
In football, success stands out for fans. I suppose they think about the trophies that they've won, those special nights. So do the team talks stand out in your mind? Do you replay them in your thoughts, perhaps?
You know, I can't really remember all my team talks, but the vein of it was that we'd always finish with concentration and work ethic. There's no way that Manchester United can have a team that doesn't work hard, no matter who you are. Even the best player has to prove himself by working hard, and there's great examples of that, you know. But the only team talk I can remember vividly is because it's brought up a lot was at half-time at Barcelona, you know. And because in a team talk, you have to find a solution while you're losing. And my last few minutes of the first half are always about, what can I say it can change us? So when I get into the dressing room, I have to find that solution why we're losing and bring the motivation to it, you know, before they go out. Because you only got about 7 or 8 minutes, really. By the time you walk up that, you know, the track or the tunnel, get into the dressing room and the players settle down, physios go around checking players for any injuries, etc. And then when they were going out that night, this just came to my mind about something that happened to me when I went to see the final of Steaua Bucharest in Barcelona in 1986. And Steve Archibald hadn't played the whole season for Barcelona. And I had to pick a Scotland team for Mexico, and he was a consideration. And he said to me after the game, he says, nightmare, he says, you have to walk by that cup. You can't touch it. So it stuck in my mind. And you look for that sort of inspiration that can make a difference, you know, to the players going out. Give them a motivation that's so important that it elevates their performance, you know. And they keep talking about it, players, that's the thing, and that's why I can always remember it.
One of your greatest achievements at United was developing, nurturing and ultimately selecting the class of '92. How difficult was that to sort of put them in at the right time but to also keep their feet firmly on the ground?
Well, they were all given a hard upbringing, really. All the young players, through the reserve coaches, with several at different times, Jim Ryan, Ricky Spezia, Carlos Queiroz had a big influence, Ray Malmsteen, some young players, etc. So we'd always give them a hard time, and Eric Harrison used to be particularly tough on them and give them that right proper upbringing, because if they get to the first team, they have to deal with, not just me, expectation. That's what they've got to deal with. And at Manchester United, we want players who can go out in front of that pitch, 75,000 people, and not be a bit daunted by it. That's the kind of player we need. And that upbringing at United was really important. But that class of 92, a lot of young players, and the reason they are successful is what they've got themselves. They all practiced. They all developed a friendship with each other, which was really important. And there was a couple of players who would have been alongside them in terms of their futures, was Ben Thornley and Chris Casper. Both excellent young footballers, but their careers were destroyed by bad injuries. So therefore, they all shared that great desire to be footballers, and they all practiced, and they all worked hard. And they had, how would you put it, they had an aura about them when they played for the youth teams. And I remember we were going down to London, and there was always phone Eric Harrison to see how the A team or the B team would go on. And they were playing Liverpool, and Alan Hansen, I think Gary Gliss were making their comeback in the A team. I would beat them 6-1. And Scholes, I think, scored 4 or something like that. And I phoned Eric, and he honestly, he was so excited, he could hardly talk to me about Scholes, you know. He said, "Oh, boss, we've got a player here. Honestly, you need to get him in that first team." And that team was a striker. Fact is, I think his first game came on as a striker at Ipswich, you know. But then he developed into a fantastic midfield player. But they had an aura about them. David Beckham would go into the School of Excellence at night time and help out the coaches with the young kids. So these certain desires, you know, that give them a better chance of being successful. And that all top players, like Ronaldo practicing, I mean, he's unbelievable. So they're gifted with desire.
Sir Alex, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you and to talk about the leadership, and some terrific stories in the book, of course, and wish you all the best with it.
Thanks very much, David. Well done.
Thanks a lot.